Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to the Brumbies versus the Waratahs, brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, a podcast YouTube channel. What else? I've gone blank now. A Twitter account and website bringing you the best in rugby prediction and opinion. And the Waratahs got themselves a rare victory down in Canberra. They won this one 17-24 in the end, and it should have been a lot larger than that, but Foley really was missing his kicking boots today. Only made 56% of his kicks. I think he missed something like 3 penalties and a conversion. So left something like 11 points out there. On the other hand, the Brumbies only missed 1 conversion. So, as I say, definitely a bad day with the kicking boot for Foley. But luckily for this time, it didn't affect them. Also, so early on, the Brumbies gave away an early kick or an early penalty for taking the player in the air, and that was a sign that we were going to see quite through this. There's quite a lot of mistakes and errors by both sides, really. The Waratahs also lost Folau early on as well, and that was a big loss for them. Obviously, it looks like he had some hamstring issues on his left leg, so we'll see. Hopefully, it isn't too bad. Had lots of ice on that one during the rest of the game. We then saw the Brumbies managed to even things up by catching the Waratahs offside, and it was basically a kicking or giving up penalties early doors, as both sides really couldn't break down the other's defence and end up giving up mistakes. And you've got to say that one of the big problems for the Tars in that first half was turnovers. They had plenty of possession, well, actually, the Brumbies it says had more possession, but it came across. It felt like the Tars had the better quality possession and were pushing the Brumbies, but they kept on conceding turnovers, and which stifled them. And it didn't help also that Foley missed 2 early kicks as well, so that which kept the Brumbies in this one. Admittedly, one of those was because he had a high tackle on himself and missed that one. But he was also kicking better from the left side of the pitch than the right side of the pitch. So clearly, lessons there. If you're going to give up penalties against Foley, while Foley's kicking, give them on the left side of the pitch as he's kicking at the sticks, because he wasn't as good from the other side. We saw some silly stuff by both teams. I mean, the Brumbies managed to get themselves back in the lead after about 20 minutes, but stinging straight from the kickoff, they don't release the ball and give up a silly penalty. Now, luckily that time, Foley missed the kick, but 3 minutes later they gave up another penalty, which he did pop over. So you've got to say lots of penalties given up, or lots of kickable penalties was the important thing really in that first half were being given up. The penalty count in the end was 9-10, which isn't overly big on either way. By the way, if you're watching the live show, please do put comments in. This is a solo show this time. I don't have any guests with me, so happy to take questions and comments from the chat. The Brumbies got the first try of the game. Lovely little. The Tars gave up possession silly from the kickoff by just stepping out on the full as they caught the ball. The Brumbies, good line out. A couple of phases later, the grubber through and they got the try. Missed the kick, unfortunately, but that put them up 11-6. And they managed to hold on to that. And that was after 25 minutes. They managed to hold on to that for most of the rest of the first half. Both sides, we saw lots of errors from. We saw throws not going in straight. We saw knock-ons. We had those 10 turnovers from the Waratahs, as I said. But I've got to say, refereeing always can get a bit annoying. I did like the ref overall, but at one point he goes, one of the things I've been talking about here is that you're supposed to fully bind when producing that blocking wall for the scrum half to do his box kicks from. So you could hear the ref clearly say, fully bind 4. And 4 just stands there with his hand on the iron next to him, clearly not fully bound, doesn't change his position at all, and the ref doesn't blow it up. It's got to say, look, if you're going to give warnings, you've got to blow them up as well. Let's have some consistency there, rather than if the warnings could just be ignored, what's the point, basically? So anyway, small little thing in that first half. But then we had a massive passage of play. It felt like it went on several minutes. I mean, we had one player, Leofano, was down for a chunk of that, getting checked out, managed to get up. He had fully was dealt with, got up and then and continued. But lots of kicks back and forth, a few knock-ons which were then played on, that caused turnovers. And eventually, Nairavoro was released out wide on the left, and yeah, ran it in from about halfway. We know generally he kind of powers him in from much shorter than that normally, but he got that one in from quite a long way out. That helped him to be the top ball carrier of the game. Not one of those things that you kind of associate with him because he's so big and powerful. But 107 meters running with the ball was clearly the most in the game. Actually, twice what anyone else carried the ball for. So, well, no, sorry, Newsom also got 72 meters there, but anyone else, the next highest was 50. So he had a very good game in that first half, and obviously getting that try. Then in the second half, he got a try, not from so far out this time. First phase, lovely wraparound play, clearly one off the training ground, where Foley released Newsom. Newsom, that's the other player that I mentioned, who got 72 meters off his 9 runs. But yeah, you looked like he was going to pin his ears and go for the corner, but he realised he wasn't going to make it. Made sure that he got his arm free in the tackle, popped it up, and Nairavoro just had about 5 meters to go to put it down comfortably. And at 11:18, it looked like at that point that the Tars were just going to push on and win this game quite comfortably. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, that's kind of didn't happen. One of the things we did see though was even with Folau that were not there, the Tars then went through a period where they were trying to kick to the right wing, and the Brumbies really looked uncomfortable under those high balls and weren't dealing with them very well. It wasn't until Goodwin came on later in the game where that sort of Godwin came on later in the game where that got shored up. But there were definitely times where they were putting it over there, and they would either get the ball back or the Brumbies would knock it on. But unfortunately, the Waratahs decided to continue with their errors that they'd had in the first half, and again took a player out in the air, which allowed the Brumbies to kick themselves back into this. So on 47 minutes, it was 14-18, and it was going to be around that 7 to 4 mark gap for the rest of the game, basically. And that's is how it kind of panned out. We then went through a period. I mean, it took us about 15 minutes before we got the next score, and basically every time the Brumbies got the ball, and we saw some Pocock. Pocock has some great snaffles, as you'd expect, but then whoever he gave it to would then knock the ball on, or they would get a penalty and they would miss touch. Banks came on and missed a banana kick at one point, and the Tars basically sat down in the Brumbies half for about 13 or 14 minutes without getting any points. The Brumbies just got out, and when they did, they missed touch. The Tars came back, high tackle on one of the Waratahs players, and Foley this time slotted the points. In that second half, we really did see both of the defences to sort of get up on the breakdown, which was causing quite some of these turnovers. So it wasn't all about offensive mistakes. There were errors from the players as well. Pressure then allowed on about 11 minutes before the end, allowed the Brumbies to put over another penalty and close it within 4. And straight afterwards, we saw Henry Spate take out Beale late after he kicked the ball, which effectively was which ended the game at that point. 10 minutes out, suddenly a kick from 22, which would have been a Brumbies line out just inside their own half, turns into a Waratahs line out. Sorry, Waratahs penalty in their own half. And whilst Foley kicked and hit the post, and didn't get the points, it just meant that the Brumbies were at the wrong end of the pitch. This wasn't a game where the Brumbies looked like scoring any long distance tries at all. Their only try came from a chip through close out. So this really wasn't going to happen. They really weren't going to go the full distance, and the Tars knew all they had to do was sit in the Brumbies half and they would be comfortable. In the end, a scrum penalty on the Brumbies' own feed gave the Tars a late kick to open it back up to seven points, and then it was basically all over, because, as I say, the Brumbies were never going to score twice in the last few minutes, and they just weren't going to score from a long way out. Poor execution by the Brumbies late on also finished off the game, and with a knock on, and you got to just say that was one of the tales of this. On the attacking side, we've already talked about Naravoro and the ability that he had, which was showing his strength again, getting 2 of the tries. Obviously, when you're talking about the Tars, it's always about the Foley and Beale show. Foley with 24 passes, Beale with 16. They both interchanged and switched in to play that role, which gave Foley a bit more time and space sometimes. And I say they switched it around. Also allowed them during the second half to go left and right, which again meant that it asked more questions of the defence. Newsom had a good game, and when he came on, Curtis Rona got through work, but wasn't that impactful. And Hegarty was solid at the back, which is what you kind of needed. Going over looking at the Brumbies side of things, Harrower obviously ran at the show. I thought that Leofano would have had a few more passes. Only had 3 passes and 3 runs in this game, and I thought they'd involved him a bit more than that. Didn't really get involved in the game too much. So I'd like to have seen more from him. The back row of McCafferty, Pocock, Nazarani got through quite a few runs, but again, they didn't really break out or have that much of an impact. McCaffrey got 31 metres, Pocock 10, and Nazarani 34 off 11, 8, and 9 runs. So they got themselves in there. They definitely put the work in, but they were shackled pretty well. Godwin, as I say, came on, had a good game under the high ball, also made some metres as well. On the defensive side of things, the big work was done by Wells and Hooper for the Tars, 14 and 13 tackles each. Holloway didn't really get in, only of the 4 tackles, so it'll be a bit more work from him. But also Robinson at prop and Gordon at the hooker both got through quite a few tackles as well. Then if we look at it from the other side, you could see that the Tars getting a bit wider, because Kieran Dryani and Leofano, the centres, both had 7 tackles each, got through quite a bit of work. Whereas obviously then Pocock was mainly the second man in there, so you don't see many tackles, but he does get through a lot of work at that breakdown. On the disciplines side of things, just a quick check. I'll say Hooper 3 penalties, but that's kind of, he's going to play on the line, and that's kind of going to happen. So as I say, this game was basically too many errors, too many turnovers, and despite that, the Tars managed to come through. On the defensive side of things, actually the tackling was pretty good. Tars up around 83%. The Brumbies a little bit lower. Both put through about the same sort of amount of work. It felt like the Tars controlled that second half, but the stats suggest that they were only up at 57% territory. It definitely felt like a lot more than that, and was earlier on. The Brumbies came back a bit towards the end, but errors on their side just meant there was never going to. They were really going to score those points. So that's how the game went. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed my coverage this weekend. I'll be back again for the Lions versus the Crusaders tomorrow night. So join me for post-match analysis of that game, and enjoy whatever rugby you're watching.